Hello, Brad Scheelke here at Conversations with Mormons. This is part 3 of Melting Meg's Heart. Meg's pride is her only real problem in life. Why is that? Meg's pride tricks her to rebel against her proper place in life, to rebel against what it means to be truly human. She intuitively knows her proper place as well as her true humanity. She knows those things, as Paul says in Romans 1, because all of God's truth, goodness, and righteousness is written on her soul. She knows all those things, but her pride suppresses that knowledge in irreverence and unrighteousness, which is another name for self-righteousness. Since self-righteousness clearly isn't good, why doesn't she notice this? Her pride blinds her to the beautiful principle that there is a good way to get to the good things we all long for. My style of evangelism is to unveil God's good way to get to those good things we long for. People know this good way intuitively, but pridefully suppress it like I do. My style also helps them notice that their pride is the whole problem and that Jesus is the way to experience every nuance of moral goodness. Let's return to Meg's story and see how I bypassed her pride. When I declared my total confidence in God having no negative thoughts about her, she smiled and thanked me. I asked if that was true or just made her feel good. She smiled and said it was true. That question further lowered her defenses and chipped away at the foundation of the cultural lie that truth is known through feelings. Mormons really struggle with that lie. Did she ever have negative thoughts about herself? She stopped smiling and said, often. That question revealed a contrast between God's way and her way. It also got her self-righteousness out into the open, though she couldn't see it yet. Christ's perfection and death for sin is the only revelation of God's righteousness. In Christ, there is no condemnation. Condemnation exists only in self-righteousness. This means Meg's identity and mindset were completely self-righteous. How could I help her see this? I smiled and said, wait a minute. If God has no negative thoughts about you, but you do, are you telling me that God is wrong or that you have some confusion? Meg smiled and said she had some confusion. That was a big step for Meg. Our pride hates to admit any confusion. My question bypassed her pride and gave her freedom to own confusion as her problem. She didn't know the nature of her confusion, but this honesty turned her confusion into a treasure hunt. I often tell Mormons I have a lot of confusion. I do this to whet their appetite to hear what I've discovered about the treasure. Her answer made her vulnerable, and I didn't want her pride to steal that good step forward. I said it took vulnerability to admit confusion and asked if vulnerability was good. She said it was. I asked that question to lead her to own it for herself and not just hear me say it. Where did her self-condemning thoughts come from? Meg said they came from Satan. Mormons are confused about Satan. They teach and say that Satan always pressures them to do sinful behavior. Paul says the opposite, that Satan counterfeits righteousness or right relationships. This means that Satan always pressures us to be self-righteous. I asked Meg if she knew what the name Satan meant. She didn't. I said Satan means accuser or adversary, and that Satan always accuses her and God. Did she know the meaning of his other name, devil? She hadn't thought about it. I said devil means slanderer, and that he always slanders God, her, and me. Would she like to discover why she sometimes buys Satan lie? She did, and we were off to the races. I said God has 4 good expectations for you that Satan lies about. First, Jesus created you in God's image to be a fully valuable person all the time. Do you think that's true? She said, not always. I smiled and responded, do you mean you're not always a fully valuable person? Or you sometimes forget? She smiled and said it's always true, but she often forgets. This humorous interchange did much in Meg's heart. I often ask questions with an edge of humor or irony to invite Mormons to relax, take off their masks, and join me in honesty about our failings. Mormonism is full of pressure to be worthy with little room for humor or honesty. That question also chops at the root of emotional reasoning. Meg needed to discover the moral reason for her self-condemnation. Additionally, that question makes obvious a personal contradiction and does so in a way that intensifies curiosity about our treasure hunt. I next asked Meg why she forgets that she's always a fully valuable person. She didn't know. I told her that she did know, but her pride hid it from her. Next week, we'll explore how this led to Meg's shocking discovery of her self-betrayal. Until then, please join me in thanking God for making you a fully valuable person all the time, even when you forget. Welcome to the conversation.